Good morning, everyone. Before I give updates on our actions to resolve the migrant and asylum seeker challenges, I'd like to address another problem originating from congressional Republicans. We are literally starting the countdown clock to what could be a government shutdown 5 days from right now. There are roughly 51,000 federal employees living in New York, and depending on what agency they work for and their classification, they're all in danger of being furloughed by the federal government unless they're essential employees. There'll be an immediate economic impact on their families, and this will have significant impacts on the health and safety of New Yorkers. Women and children, those most in need of help and support, will suffer the worst effects of a government shutdown. What am I talking about? Section 8 housing vouchers and transfers won't happen. Food inspections will not happen. Funding that gives benefits, food benefits for pregnant mothers and infants and children will run out if the Republicans don't act now, literally taking foods from the mouths of babies. A government shutdown will also create significant delays in getting disaster aid from those recovering from the storms on the East Coast, particularly here in New York, as well as it threatens vital aid as far away as places as Hawaii in the aftermath of the fires that ravaged that beautiful place. It also means that new federal funds will not be available to help states like New York deal with the asylum seekers crisis. But guess what? We're better than that here in New York. We'll find a way through this. And we've been leading on the migrant situation because Republicans in Washington have failed time and time again to just roll up their sleeves, work with Democrats, work with the president, and have real, meaningful immigration reform. And if they fail on leading the government and the House of Representatives and shut down government too, we'll find a way to keep Lady Liberty still standing in the harbor with the lights still on. We'll pick it up if we have to. But right now, I'm just calling on New Yorkers. Reach out to your federal representatives, especially those who are represented by Republicans, because they have the power to go to Washington, talk to the speaker, talk to the leadership, and say, don't do this to my state. They've been through enough. So get back to Washington, do the jobs that the voters sent you to do, and stop playing with the future of this country and our state. That is my message today. And now I'd like to talk about New York's role in assisting with the migrant crisis. As I've talked about before, we're facing two real challenges simultaneously. One is a humanitarian crisis. Tens of thousands of asylum seekers have left their homes that were ravaged by violence, political corruption, starvation, an economy brought to its knees. And they've come here in search of one thing. That's the ability to work. Work leads them to a better life, to be able to take care of their kids. So we have that crisis unfolding. We've been talking about this for a long time, and we're feeling the effects here in New York. But on the other hand, we have a shortage of workers crisis. Since I've been governor 2 years, unemployment has decreased 42%, from 6.9% to 3.9%. Ordinarily, those are good numbers. I mean, that's less than 4%. Only saw that a few times in my life. But what that means is businesses from as far north as the Business Council meeting I was at on Friday, to the Western New York, to New York City, to Long Island. That's all anybody's talking about in business. We don't have enough workers. And literally, people coming up to me at this statewide meeting of businesses saying, Governor, can you send me some of the migrants? I need them to work. So we can do this. We have the need and the demand. We match them together, and that's how you take a crisis and turn it into an opportunity. And that's what I'm most excited about. And we have over 400,000 open jobs right now, everything from farms to construction to restaurants to hotels, nursing homes and hospitals. My gosh, they could use workers right now. So today I'm going to be talking about some of our new resources that we're deploying to, again, turn these challenges into opportunities. And I want to acknowledge the individuals who've been really at the forefront of being the face of New York's efforts to help with this crisis, to help the city of New York get through this. Major General Ray Shields from the New York National Guard, I want to thank you. We just saw each other in Farmingdale 2 weeks ago preparing for a hurricane. See you during blizzards and flooding events. And I was just speaking to your leadership team and talking about how normally we deal with crises wrought by Mother Nature, but right now we're dealing with a crisis wrought by man's cruelty to man. What is going on in people's home countries, driving them to flee. Thank you. Thank you and all the people you represent. Extraordinary work. I never cease to be amazed by the depth of compassion by the people sitting here, volunteers. This is a volunteer call. National Guard members at home in their normal jobs with their families, willing to come here to New York and put themselves out there to be that human face of people in crisis. So thank you. Thank all the members of the National Guard. I also want to recognize someone who's been helping us manage this military-style operation to respond, and that is our Commissioner of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, Jackie Bray, and we've been through a lot together as well. You named the storm, we've been side by side, and I am so confident of your leadership and the path that you've put us on. So as I sat and talked to some of the National Guard leadership, we were talking about what's it like. You're out there. You're the first person they see when they arrive and they get dropped off, doing the intake at the Roosevelt Hotel, seeing people with trauma in their eyes and children crying. It's extraordinary. And now you're part of the effort to help them be able to leave those shelters, get tracked, the casework, to understand who has what options before them, and help them be on that path to the life that they sought. And so today, under my leadership and under my direction, New York National Guard will deploy an additional 150 members to support the asylum seeker mission. That brings our total to 2,200 National Guard members supporting the overall mission. And what this will allow us to do, 250 National Guard members will focus solely on case management. And ultimately, the process, now that we have the opportunity granted by President Biden to help the Venezuelans who came before July 31st be able to apply for temporary protective status, and what follows that, literally with the same application, is the work authorization, that coveted work authorization. That's their ticket to the American dream. So you'll be helping them get a job, helping them support themselves, helping them leave these shelters, because I believe they did not come all these thousands of miles to live in a shelter with hundreds, if not thousands of others. So the National Guard has already been working to survey them. We have different categories. Some people are eligible to work right now. If they already came in through the Customs and Border Protection app, there are people who qualify for that. There are parolees eligible to work. There are the asylum seekers who need to apply for asylum and wait 180 days. And now we have this new category that allow the expedited work permits for Venezuelans who arrived here earlier. So the first thing you have to do is talk to them, survey them, track the information, find out what they're missing. Some may be here and just want a bus ticket to another state, but they don't know where to go. We can make that happen, but you have to have those conversations. You are the individuals who are that face, having those critical conversations. So I've already invested over $50 million to support case management. It's very labor intensive. We have people all over the state. It's not just the 5 boroughs. We have people up in Albany and Buffalo and Rochester and elsewhere. And we also have to support the legal services to make sure they can legally apply and not be missing any paperwork that'll delay them. We have given funds directly to health and hospitals, New York City's Asylum Help Center, and local nonprofits all over the state. And right now, we are building up an infrastructure, starting with my request to the Department of Labor to start matching eligible asylum seekers with the employers, a portal. We'll be talking more about how this is being operationalized an event probably next week. But doubling down on these efforts, after an intensive lobbying effort with the White House and the collaboration that resulted with President Biden being engaged and helping us with that decision on the asylum seekers just a few days ago, that is a path. It is a very strong opportunity for us to start helping some of these people. So when you think about what we've done thus far, $1.7 billion already from the state to shelter and support these asylum seekers. We've gone above and beyond what is legal. We're here to help. We've played a major role in opening shelters and facilities, working again hand in hand with the mayor. And right now, if you do the math, right now we contribute probably about 40% of the cost of the shelters, the facilities, the tents. And when we open Floyd Bennett Field, and we're absorbing all the costs of that, multiple millions, it'll grow even higher, upwards of almost 45% that the state is absorbing to cover the cost of sheltering. So we said we'd be partners. We said we'd help. It's money, it's facilities, locations. We've cleaned up many, fixed them up, got them ready, and it's also the personnel. So again, our goal, take care of people when they arrive, show them the compassion of New Yorkers, but give them what they want, which is a quick exit out of the shelter system. And that is something we're going to be focusing on very intensely over the next couple of weeks. So we are going to be able to do this with the support of with the National Guard, and to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind, because everyone has that opportunity to find their way here in our state. And I also just want to conclude by saying this. This could be an undaunting challenge for some, overwhelming. And I will say I give all the credit in the world to the City of New York and Mayor Adams for what they've had to deal with, and the numbers continue to grow, and we're there to be their partners. But to those who question even why this is happening, this is New York. You need to remember this is New York. We celebrate our diversity. We celebrate who we are. We would not be this state if we were not open to immigrants from around the world. That's the beauty of New York. And if you just personalize it, every one of your parents or grandparents or great-parents, they came from somewhere else. And I speak often of the influence of my grandparents. Came here leaving extreme poverty in Ireland. Like millions before, the potato famine drove them away. My grandparents came later. Started out as migrant farm workers, working in the wheat fields of South Dakota. Not their idea of what they expected, but it's what they got, first jobs. Then they were qualified enough to become domestic servants, rising up. And ultimately, Grandpa became a steel worker. It was hot, dirty work. At the end of the day, he was exhausted. You could see the black soot on his face, carrying that lunch pail. We used to drop him off with one car for a family of 8. But he was proud. He was proud that he could support his family, all these kids who went on to become educators, school superintendents, business people, and their children. Sometimes one becomes a governor. That's the American story. That is who we are. That is what we cherish. And we will get through this together, because New Yorkers always rise up together, to the envy of everyone else. Try to knock us down by a terrorism act. Think you've beaten us down and crushed our soul and our spirits? No, we get stronger together. A pandemic, worst place in the world for the time being. Did it knock us down, take us off? No, we got stronger. And New Yorkers together will get through this, because that's who we are. That's something we must never, ever forget. And with that, I want to bring up Major General Shields to talk about his work. And again, I am forever grateful to all of you and those you represent who are out there in the unknown, but being that very human face to someone who's just so desperate for help. Thank you. Major Shields.
Well, good afternoon, Governor Hochul, Commissioner Bray, Brigadier General Smith, Yapel, Colonel Margolis, and Colonel Lefton. Thank you all for being here, the members of Joint Task Force Asylum. We're pleased to host you here today in our Harlem Armory, the home of the historic 369th Harlem Hellfighters. Today, the 369th Division Support Sustainment Brigade is a descendant of the 369th Infantry who fought in World War I and World War II. Sergeant Henry Johnson fought with the 369th in World War I, and many years after was awarded the Medal of Honor by President Obama for his actions in the Argonne Forest in 1918. Today, the service members of the New York Army and Air National Guard, the Naval Militia, and the New York Guard carry on the tradition of service so many have fought for and died for since 1636 when the National Guard was founded. Be it a war to defend our nation, or a global pandemic, winter storm, coastal storm, or migrant crisis, the National Guard is there. The asylum seeker mission we are presently assisting New York State and New York City is another demonstration of our commitment to service. With more than 1,900 service members presently on state active duty and almost 427,000 duty days since September of 2022, we stand ready to assist those seeking asylum by helping link them with the resources they need to be successful and to move forward with their lives here in our country. Over the coming days, as the governor mentioned, we will be adding more service members to our state active duty roles to help facilitate the integration of asylum seekers. In addition to our state active duty missions here at home, we also continue our federal training and overseas deployment. This past year, we saw the largest mobilization in many years with more than 2,800 soldiers being deployed. The New York National Guard and our state defense forces represent more than 20,000 dedicated service members. But to carry out both our state and federal missions, we need dedicated soldiers and airmen. Our Army and Air National Guard, with the recruiting and retention teams, have been working to find these people. For a third year in a row, the New York Army National Guard is the #1 recruiting and retention state in the nation. Third year in a row, Governor. The New York Army National Guard is more than 107% assigned strength, and the New York Air National Guard is almost 102% assigned strength. The state's recruitment incentive and retention program, which pays for college education for our service members, is a key component of our success. Both the Naval Militia and the New York Guard have added hundreds of service members over the past year, primarily because of the opportunity to serve on state active duty missions as we presently are. Governor Hochul, thank you for your support of the National Guard and our state defense forces. We sincerely appreciate what your administration has done for our service members through funding for facility improvements and for continuing interest in the programs that support our service members and their families. The New York National Guard and our state defense forces are prepared and ready to respond to save lives, mitigate suffering, and protect property. Always ready, always there. And I would like to next introduce Commissioner Jackie Bray.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Governor. You know, I remember, and I want to really speak to the National Guard members in the room, and thank you, really, from all of us in Governor Hochul's administration for the work you do. You are really, obviously, on the front lines and in the day-to-day of supporting people and helping people. I remember pretty well back in October 1st calling General Shields and saying, do you think we could get a couple hundred people to go support the city? And you were game, your team was game, I was grateful for that, the governor was grateful for that. And then a couple months later I said, okay, do you think we could get another 100 people? And we were at 400 around Thanksgiving, and of course now we're up well over 2,000, and the mission continues to grow. I am particularly thrilled about how the mission is growing this week and this month. Because, you know, I say often we have to keep this simple. We have people coming in the front door of shelter, the city has people coming in the front door of shelter, and then the city has people exiting the back door of shelter. And we have to do two things. We have to try to reduce the number of people who need shelter, and we have to speed the timeline to exit from shelter. And I wish that there was a silver bullet to do that, but there isn't in sheltering and in a humanitarian crisis like this. There is no silver bullet. We've got to do every step of this process, and the National Guard is taking on, along with hundreds of staff from New York City, funded by Governor Hochul and the state. the mission of helping people exit shelter and helping people exit shelter faster. What does that mean? Well, it means that people have to be diverted from the front door. At the Roosevelt Arrival Center, the city, supported by the National Guard, is doing diversion work. It means that people, when they're in shelter, have to get case management. Governor Hochul stepped up, understanding that sometimes it takes more investments up front to save time on the back end. So you have to spend money today and devote resources today to help people leave shelter faster. That's why Governor Hochul put $20 million into health and hospitals for the city to expand case management. It's why Governor Hochul is devoting an additional 150 National Guard members today to be able to deploy an additional 250 National Guard members into the shelter system to speed case management. You have to get people the legal services they need in order for them to be self-sufficient. It's why Governor Hochul funded up front $10 million to the city for legal services that's supporting the Asylum Application Help Center, and why Governor Hochul, and under Governor Hochul's leadership, the Department of State and the Office of New Americans nearly doubled their contracts this year for legal services across the state to help people get what they need to be self-sufficient. And finally, you need work, as Governor Hochul has said over and over again. And that is why we are so thrilled that through Governor Hochul's advocacy, the Biden administration has granted temporary protective status to Venezuelans who have arrived in this country before July 31st. Like I said, no silver bullet. It's going to take all of these things, and under Governor Hochul's leadership and through the National Guard, New York State is stepping up to help with each of them. So I just want to, again, thank you for your work and say how really excited I am that in addition to the day-to-day of sheltering people, you'll now, as National Guard members, be taking on the role of helping people leave shelter. Because to manage this crisis, it cannot simply be about opening more shelters or sheltering. It has to also be about how we help people not enter shelter in the first place and how we help people leave shelter and leave shelter quickly. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes today's program. Thank you for joining us today. Q&A with press will begin momentarily.